All right, how you guys doing today? We are going to hop into a reaction. The first things first, though, I just want to make sure y'all like that video. You know what to do. Hit a little exit full screen, scroll just a little bit, like the video, full screen it back up. You feel me. Technically, I don't know if I want to make a separate channel for this kind of thing, but we're going to be reacting to a Stated Clearly video, which is going to be talking about what is the evidence for evolution. Just because we obviously know that evolution would render Jesus useless. One, because the creation story wouldn't have happened, but also two, it just throws off the whole biblical timeline and everything. So it just make the whole Bible a lie. Not a lie, but more just mythology. So let's check out. I always talk about wanting to study more into science and evolution and understanding the arguments so I could possibly disprove them. But today we're going to take that a step further. Watch a Stated Clearly video on what is the, I hope, the most simplest explanation on why we believe it and why people, not me, but like why people believe in it and all that type of stuff. So let's check it out.
Stated Clearly presents, what is the evidence for evolution? The theory of biological evolution makes two very bold claims about living creatures. First, all living things on Earth are related. They evolved from a common ancestor. Second, the evolution of living things is powered by natural processes, things which can be studied and understood. But is there really any evidence that these two claims are true? Yes. There are so many observable facts from so many different fields of study that the only way we can even begin to talk about them is to group them into categories or lines of evidence. To keep things simple, here we'll focus on evolution's first claim that all living things on Earth are related. We cannot tackle the entire tree of life at once. After all, there's an estimated 8.7 million species alive today. So instead, we'll focus most of our attention on one fairly small but fascinating branch of the evolutionary tree, cetaceans. This branch includes whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Biologists tell us that all these creatures are closely related, and that the entire group evolved from an ancient four-legged land mammal. Instead of taking their word for it, let's look at the facts. We'll start
Just to mention, right, taking them at their word for it, if we were to, just think, right? I don't care if you're atheist. I don't care if you're, well, I care because I would like you to go to heaven and change your ways. But in the scope of this video, I don't care what your belief system is. I just want you to be honest with me and say, if you looked at a whale with no prior evidence of evolution or any type of thing like that and said, this thing used to be a four-legged mammal that walked on land, we'd both look at each other and say, I'm stupid, because clearly that should not be the case. Keyword there, should, right? But let's see if that is the case based on what they're about to present to us, right?
by looking at a few from the field of comparative anatomy, the study of differences and similarities between living things. Whales live in water, and from a distance, they sort of look like giant fish. A close inspection of their anatomy, however, tells us a very different story. Whales, just like land mammals but unlike fish, have placentas and give live birth. They feed milk to their young. They are warm-blooded, which is extremely rare for a fish. And whales do not have gills. Instead, just like us, they breathe air with two fully developed lungs. Whales don't seem to have noses like mammals do. Instead, they breathe through blowholes coming out the tops of their heads. Some whales have two blowholes which almost look like nostrils. But dolphins and porpoises only have one. Surprisingly, if you look at their skulls, you find that the blowhole splits into two nasal passages inside the head. Could it be that the blowhole is actually a highly modified mammal nose? It looks that way, but we'll need more evidence to be sure. Many whales have hair, just like land mammals. In this photograph, you can actually see the whiskers of this baby gray whale as he rests his chin on mama's back. Strangely, whales have arm, wrist, hand, and finger bones inside their front flippers. Here's a photo of these bones, the same bones that bats, hippos, and people have in their front appendages. 1 bone, 2 bones, wrist, hand, and finger bones. Modern whales do not have back legs, but they do have a strange pair of bones where the hind legs should be. Here's a picture of these bones from a bowhead whale. They almost look like shriveled hip, thigh, and shin bones. This one even has a ball and socket joint between the hip and thigh bone, just like the ball and socket joint in your own hip. Is this resemblance a mere coincidence, or are these real leg bones? Perhaps leftovers from the whale's evolutionary history? Before we draw any bold conclusions, let's see if a completely separate line of evidence will confirm our suspicions. Embryology is the study of how creatures develop before being born or hatching from an egg. Here we see a dolphin and a human embryo side by side at similar stages of development. Notice that they both have what look like arm buds and leg buds. In humans, the leg buds grow to become legs. In whales, they grow for a while but then stop, effectively fading away as the rest of the whale continues to grow. These are all photographs of a common dolphin at different stages of growth. Notice that early on, we see 2 nostril grooves on the front of the face, just like you'd expect in a puppy or a human. As the dolphin continues to grow, the nostrils migrate to the top of the head and fuse together, becoming the dolphin's blowhole. So far, we have multiple facts from 2 independent lines of study, comparative anatomy and embryology, that are...
Okay, so my issue with this, right, he's not finished, and I understand that. However, I'm just letting you know in the middle of it to let you know my thoughts. 1, before I forget them, but 2, because maybe he'll answer them and I could say, okay, my doubt has been laid away, right? So if we take seeds, for example, right, plant seeds and everything like that, have we seen, because they don't really leave a history like animals would, right? And this is just a question, I'm just posing a question. Do trees or like any other plants leave behind history? I know they can make fossils, like you can find like a leaf fossil or something like that, but have we seen them when they're in seed form? Because that's essentially the way that embryos are, right? They're like a little seed in a pocket. That's why we call eggs and stuff like that in the incubate kind of thing. But in relation to this, the way a seed grows is it follows some type of plan. And I'm not going at that argument where it's like, where does the plan come from or whatever the case is, right? But I will say that the DNA kind of dictates these things, but we don't know how. And if we do know how, forgive me, but I don't think we know how DNA works. And with this, I think that this isn't necessarily indicative of evolution, where it's like, we found this thing that looks close with the nostrils on the front, and then we keep finding things that they go upper and upper and upper, or higher and higher and higher. Sorry, upper's not a word. But if this stuff is happening in the womb, how do we know that this isn't just a plan of their thing? Where it's like, oh, this thing starts here and then it moves back there. So I'm sure you've seen the pictures where it's like, is this a human embryo or is this like a squirrel embryo? And they look the freaking exact same. And it doesn't mean that, you know, this stuff can't be true or whatever. I'm just saying, like, for process of devil's advocate, what my thought process is. So we'll continue on. And if you're going to respond with something in the comments, please keep it like in simplistic text. I don't understand science to a grand degree. I'm just giving my initial impressions on this line of thinking with my line of thinking as a non-science inclined person, right?
both telling us the same story. The ancestors of whales were once four-legged land creatures. Will the fossil record act as a third witness, confirming this idea? These are two species of extinct.
I don't know how he just drew that conclusion, saying that because we see the embryo has the little nubs, that it means that they were these things. I don't understand if, you know, like, you can't just assume that based on those pictures. I'm not gonna, like, I don't care what the fossil record says, and I don't care if all this stuff backs that up. I would not by any stretch of the imagination say that that confirms that, because maybe they just have nubs and that's all they're meant to be, is nubs. I would not go so far as to say those pictures say they used to be these things. There was no evidence there that that was the case from that picture. If the fossil record wants to say something different, that's up to the fossil record. Those pictures, ain't no way. Those nubs never turned into nothing. They never did nothing. Therefore, I don't think you can call that evidence, because they're not doing nothing anyway.
Extinct basilosaurid whales. These animals are known for multiple well-preserved skeletons, and they appear to have lived side by side roughly 34 to 40 million years ago. In this photograph, we're looking down at the top of a basilosaurid skull. This is not a model or a cast. These are the actual bones which were pulled from the ground. Notice that the nasal opening is not on the top of the head like those of modern whales, and not at the end of the snout like those of land mammals. Instead, it's right in the middle. This is an intermediate species, exactly what evolution tells us we should find. At the back end of a basilosaurid's body, there are small, yet fully developed hips, legs, ankle, feet, and toe bones. These legs are far too small for walking on land, but they may have been useful while mating, or for scratching away parasites and itchy skin. Evolutionary theory tells us that the further we go back in time, the harder it should be to distinguish whales from normal land mammals. Meet Myocetus. The hip bones of Myocetus seem sturdy enough to walk on land, but this animal is considered to be...
Hold on. I don't like that line just said what it said, because that sounds very... Darwin was doing this with no proof, right? Darwin was doing this based on adaptations, not necessarily evolution, is what I'm aware of. If you can tell me that Darwin was doing... I really want to go and read that book, but I haven't found time or whatever, or the effort, the energy. But if you could tell me that Darwin was doing this stuff based on evidence, of evolution and not evidence of adaptation, like with the finches and everything, then I'll shut up about it. But I don't think he was doing this based on that evidence. I think he was going off of the adaptations, right? And so him saying something along the lines, it sounds like a cover trail of, it should be harder to distinguish when we get further back, so it's gonna be a little gray area. It sounds like you're trying to cover your tracks, like, just in case we don't find anything, let's just say it's hard to find. Anyway, keep it pushing. Let's keep it pushing.
A whale for many reasons. Their skeletons have all been found among fossils of sea creatures, which tells us they lived in the ocean. Their short legs, combined with long, flat fingers and toes, suggest they were strong swimmers with webbed hands and feet. Here we see the bottom side of a Maiacetus jaw and skull. Her teeth match those of the basilosaurid whales we saw earlier, and the unique structures of her middle ear bones match those of basilosaurid whales and modern whales. Maiacetus appears to be a walking whale. Scientists have found the fossils of many ancient whale-like mammals and continue to find more. Together, these fossils blur the line between four-legged land mammals and fully aquatic modern whales, solidifying the idea that whales indeed evolved from land creatures. Now let's look at a fourth line of evidence, DNA.
See, and that just sounds preposterous to me. I need more than just like, well, we kind of see these different things, and it's like, sure, you can test them at different years, but like, that doesn't prove. That's just evidence by, and that's my issue with so many people accept this as fact. Just like when I'm being intellectually integrous, I'll say that you cannot prove Christianity, and that's part of the beauty of it, right? Maybe there's one day where it'll be fully 100% yes, fully 100% no, but if it is that case, it'll be fully 100% yes, because I say the evidence points greater there. So I say the evidence points greater there. So right, that's based on human testimony and all that type of stuff. Well, this is just based on assumptions. People are just assuming things. They're finding things and assuming things. At least that, people were talking about this and all that, and people claimed to saw it, and nobody disputed the fact that they saw these things. Evidence here was not seen. It is assumed through things we find, which is one of the reasons I can't really get behind it like that. But let's keep on keeping on.
DNA molecules contain chemical codes which act like recipes for living things. Without ever looking at bones, embryos, or anatomy, researchers can compare the DNA code of different living creatures to find out who is most closely related to who. Whale DNA has been compared to all kinds of other animals, fish, sea lions, you name it. And so far, the closest genetic match is to the pudgy, water-loving hippopotamus. This does not mean that whales evolved from hippos, but if this genetic finding is correct, whales and hippos both evolved from a common ancestor that lived roughly 54 million years ago. At first, the link between whales and hippos surprised researchers because whales are mainly carnivores. They eat things like fish and small crustaceans. Hippos, on the other hand, are mostly vegetarian. A closer look, however, reveals that hippos and whales actually share many strange features, some of which may have come from their common ancestor. Ancient walking whales have specially shaped ankle bones found only in hippos and the close relatives of hippos. Just like whales, hippos are known to give birth and even nurse their young underwater. They both have multi-chambered stomachs, which is common for herbivores, but is almost unheard of for meat-eating mammals. They are both missing a coat of fur, and they both have multi-chambered stomachs, which is common for herbivores, but is almost unheard of for meat-eating mammals.
And I heard this theory, which I believe, that it said, based on an alligator's dental record, we can assume that they at some point should have been herbivores. However, they're not. Same way the whale has a multi-chambered stomach like an herbivore would, but it's not an herbivore, right? It eats meat. Same way the alligator eats meat. And because of that, it could be, assumed, right? I'm not saying this is fact, but I'm just saying, like, it could be assumed that this is back before the fall when everything was good, meaning no death, which means all animals were herbivores, right? Yeah, so it says the ancient ancestors suggest or indicates some ancient reptiles of crocodiles, alligators, crocodiliforms were herbivores, published by Current Biology, blah, 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 complexly shaped teeth that are inferred to indicate herbivory. These herbivorous ancestors appeared in early groups' evolutionary history, shortly after the end of the Triassic mass extinction. Anyway, back to the video.
They are both missing a coat of fur, and here's a fun fact. Whales and hippos are among the only mammals on Earth that have internal testicles. So there you have it. 4 independent lines of evidence all tell us the exact same story. Whales evolved from four-legged land mammals.
All right, firstly, I don't, this one, just their bones alone, I don't believe that. The freaking embryo picture, I don't care how closely they freaking look. They're not the same thing, gang. They're just not. Now, a fossil record, sure, that could be evidence, but it could also just be there's a bunch of different animals that went extinct at different times that just so happen to make it look like that. And then this, the DNA thing, bro, they're just kind of close. I mean, maybe, but like I wouldn't say any. These two, I don't count as evidence. And y'all can tell me why you would. Maybe because this is like the channel suggests, this is stated clearly, right? And clearly kind of means simply here, because clearly is like anybody can understand. So for me, that'd be the simplest explanation possible. And because he's not getting too scientifically inclined with these, maybe I'm not seeing the full picture, but I just can't. I can't with those two.
But the history of whales is not the only evolutionary history that we've been able to work out. We know from fossils, DNA, embryology, and many other lines of evidence that bird wings are actually modified arms and claws. Birds evolved from dinosaur-like ancestors. We can also clearly see that bat wings evolved from five-fingered hands very similar to those of monkeys and shrews. We've found that humans share a fairly recent common ancestor with chimpanzees, that mammals evolved from reptile-like creatures, those reptile-like creatures evolved from amphibian-like creatures, those amphibian-like creatures evolved from fish-like creatures, and fish, if you go back far enough, share a common ancestor with segmented worms. So to
I don't care how much evidence there is, if you weren't taught biology or evolution, you would say that a fish being related to a worm is stupid, right? I'm not saying it is currently, but I'm just saying if you weren't taught any of that stuff, you would look at a fish and you'd look at a worm and say, I don't believe you, you sound dumb.
sum things up, thousands of observable facts from completely independent fields of study have come together to tell us the exact same story. All living things on Earth are related. I'm John Perry, and that's a basic overview of the evidence for evolution, stated clearly.
So like always, the point of this is for education. If y'all want to leave comments, please leave them with timestamps and, you know, answer my questions, ask your own question. Doesn't really matter too much. I just, you know, we're a resource, trying to be a resource here on this channel. Other than that, all right, that's going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.